A mail truck was stopped on a highway. Two men in police uniforms stepped out, and the driver treated them like officers. He didn't know the badge was fake. They forced the driver and guard out, bound them, and moved the cash into waiting cars. The truck was abandoned on the shoulder. By the time the town woke up, millions were gone. Investigators chased leads, followed marked bills to pawn shops, and interviewed suspects. Years later, most of the haul, about $16 million, still had no owner and no conviction that closed the book. A Wells Fargo depot in Connecticut closed for the night. An employee who knew the keys and the routine opened the vault and walked out with $22 million. It wasn't a smash and grab. It was a quiet, perfectly timed removal from inside the system. The robbery was later linked to political networks and claimed by groups that cloaked motive in ideology. But the paper trail dissolved into countries, shell companies, and dead-end accounts. A few names were named, a few arrests made, and most of the cash never reappeared. A secure cash depot in Sylmar, Los Angeles, was hit on a quiet holiday morning. Thieves breached the facility, reportedly through the roof, moved down into a high-security room, and rolled out stacks of banknotes. Surveillance showed professionals who knew what they were doing: cut, lower, load, leave. Authorities estimated the loss in the tens of millions, roughly 31 million by some reports. Cameras and tire tracks were examined, fragments of evidence collected, but the majority of the money hasn't been traced back to anyone who could be charged with the whole job. In Belfast, masked men took family members of bank employees from their homes and used them to force the bank staff to hand over cash. On December 20th, 2004, vans left the Northern Bank in 2 heavy runs, loaded with $85 million worth of notes. The theft rattled the city and fed political fears. Over the years, investigations pointed at paramilitary networks and money laundering routes. Arrests and inquiries popped up. But the core mystery, who moved the bulk of that cash and where it finally landed, remains murky. In Fortaleza, Brazil, they dug. A gang rented a small business, dug a tunnel under the street, pushed it under the bank's foundations, and pierced a vault. The operation was patient, precise, and filthy work. Weeks of soil removed quietly, bracing put in, a tunnel bored like a long secret finger under the city. On the day they broke through, trucks waited outside, and men moved bundles of currency into the back of vehicles until the vault looked emptied by ghosts. Around $115 million walked out through a hole in the earth. Arrests later recovered some cash, but most of the haul never returned. Beirut, 1976. The city was at war and normal protections were gone. Armed men forced a way through a wall next to a church and cleared a branch of the British Bank of the Middle East. They carried out cash, gold, and valuables. Estimates put the takings in the hundreds of millions. The loot flowed into wartime markets and private vaults. In the fog of civil conflict, records are thin and evidence evaporates. By the time peace talks moved forward, tracing the money had already become a story of conjecture and accusation. In Baghdad, July 2007, an inside operation moved huge sums out of the Dar es Salaam Investment Bank. Staff with access and knowledge arranged transfers and physical withdrawals, and hundreds of millions of dollars were routed through accounts and across borders in ways that outpaced auditors. Investigations later named people and froze assets in fits and starts, but in the end, most of the reported $435 million never returned to public coffers. It dissolved into property, companies, and payment chains that are hard to unwind. And then the biggest, March 18th, 2003, at the Central Bank of Iraq. As the city collapsed, orders were signed and trucks rolled in. Pallets of US dollars were loaded and driven away amid the confusion. Some of that cash later surfaced in private homes and official residences. A large portion never showed up on any public ledger again. Estimates of what left the vault that night vary, into the hundreds of millions and into the billions depending on which report you consult. But the pattern is the same. State-level withdrawals, hurried logistics, and money vanishing into a world where borders and paperwork could not keep pace. 8 robberies. Different decades. Different continents. Same result. Locked rooms emptied and ledgers with holes. Fake uniforms. Insiders, tunnels, roof breaches, wartime chaos, and digital sleights. Each method fits a different geography and a different moment in history. Some investigation happens, then nothing. If you watched this far off the video, you'd also like to subscribe too.